Well, here we are sat in this glorious cave while the rain pours down on the valley beyond, and you do get an uncanny feeling of home and sanctuary in these places, exactly how early man would have felt in here with a roaring fire and his family and his animals all around him. But I promised you a reading from my latest novel, The Tale of Evelyn Pennywhistle, and the tale begins in modern day and then goes back to the 1940s. So without further ado, this is the life and extraordinary times of Evelyn Pennywhistle. According to the Self-Righteous Residents Association of Honeywell Lane, High Wycombe, a tranquil and leafy scattering of thatched cottages nestled in the green and pleasant royal county of Buckinghamshire, number 32 was a particularly odious thorn in their collective sides. Owned by the reclusive Evelyn Margaret Pennywhistle, this decaying domicile was a subject of much mockery and malicious criticism from the townsfolk, and more importantly, her neighbours, especially those whose exquisitely manicured homes bordered her unruly plot. Those residents in question wrestled perpetually with the thorny bramble and briar which burrowed deep beneath their larch-lap fencing to invade the pristine formality of neatly clipped laurel and lavender, whilst the shade cast by the lichen-encrusted arching boughs of crab and cooking apple trees reached far beyond the confines of Evelyn's garden to shed autumn leaves and rotten fruit upon their paved patios and obsessively cultivated lawns. Property prices within a stone's throw of Evelyn Pennywhistle's shambolic cottage were stifled, to say the least, with prospective purchasers casting a disapproving eye over the adjacent dense and towering thicket and the scattering of discarded possessions within, the tin tub, the wrought iron mangle, the vintage bicycle and the bedpan, to name but a few. Unlike the stark and unholy uninhabitable outdoor spaces on either side, however, Evelyn's weed-infested wilderness was a home and a haven to countless creatures, both great and small. A family of badgers burrowed deep beneath the garden shed, in close proximity to a fox and a colony of some 70 or so rabbits that would forage and feast upon the daisies and dandelions, and the kitchen scraps Evelyn would toss from the sagging sash window. House sparrows, feisty finches and field mice nested in the moss-riddled thatched roof, whilst the robin and its mate made their home in the aforementioned bedpan. Evelyn had very little contact with those disapproving townsfolk, keeping herself to herself and rarely answering the door. Not even to the postman or the milkman, who had regularly grappled with the garden gate, which had partially parted company with its post and consequently chafed on the flagstone path. A path lined with nettles and an unruly rambling rose that snagged and tore at their trouser legs when negotiating the precarious gauntlet. 2 pints of semi-skimmed milk were left each and every morning, and in return a fistful of copper pennies would be stowed in a brown manila envelope beneath the time-worn welcome mat, which incidentally brought a wry smile to the faces of those that dared approach the door of Evelyn Pennywhistle, a woman with an acid tongue and a most unwelcoming manner indeed. "Who is it?" she would bark from behind a twitching lace curtain whenever a package or parcel could not be slipped through the spring-loaded letterbox. "Leave the damn thing and be gone." The stammering postie would be sent packing with a flea in his ear, as they say, minus the customary signature from the deeply dubious occupant, too, for that matter. A full 15 minutes would elapse before Evelyn was convinced that the coast was clear. Then, and only then, would the half-dozen latches and the cast-iron bolt be released, and the creaking door opened just enough for an arm to extend and snatch at the delivery with woolen, fingerless gloves. The heavy cedarwood fortification, with its stained glass depiction of a Celtic rose, was then slammed shut with a resounding thud, and the bolts and latches hastily restored. Evelyn was a hoarder in the extreme. In fact, she disposed of very little in the way of paper, card, glass and tin, choosing instead to repurpose the vast majority of the gaily coloured packaging discarded on a daily basis by the general populace and resigned to smoke-belching incinerators or landfill craters where it lay, wholly intact, for decades to come. Her penchant for the seemingly pointless accumulation of clutter knew no bounds and stemmed from a childhood racked with poverty and deprivation. In fact, whilst her childhood peers frolicked with porcelain dolls, spinning tops, hobby horses and toy trains, young Evelyn rattled pebbles in a powdered egg pot, on one hand to amuse herself and on the other to stifle the constant bickering of her parents, whose love for one another has long since passed, and whose heated exchanges led to the breaking of what little crockery the cash-strapped family possessed. Evelyn was an unplanned wretch and a drain on the family's limited resources, according to her father, who would frequent the Boar's Head each and every evening on his way home from the gasworks. There he would drink his fill and curse his rotten lot in life before staggering home with a clenched fist and a perpetual rage simmering within. Hearing her father's bootsteps and his key turning in the latch, Evelyn would scurry upstairs with her pigtails bobbing behind her and duck beneath her crude boxwood bed, where she'd immediately shield her eyes and rattle those pebbles in that powdered egg pot with increasing vigour as tempers flared beneath her. Evelyn's poorly patched school skirt and blouse singled her out for much ridicule and torment from morning till noon, when the school bell would ring and she would run home in floods of tears, unaware in her innocence that the hardship she cruelly endured from both her parents and her peers would eventually shape her life in its entirety. Well, I hope you enjoyed that opening few paragraphs from The Tale of Evelyn Pennywhistle. I will be doing more readings from time to time, and also readings from giants, and also readings from literary giants. But for now, I'm going to settle down in this cave with my underwood and see if I can thrash out a paragraph or two. Thank you very much for joining me once again.